Welcome to the Family Office Sherpa podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Parkin, founder and managing director of Whole Road Investments. The aim of this podcast is to provide practical and implementable advice for those looking to build, manage, or service a family office. This is not, however, investment advice, so please check the disclaimer in the show notes. In this episode, we are covering the potential new systems of family office advice.
This is the Family Office Sherpa.
So what is the current, status quo for family offices and their suppliers? And when I talk about suppliers, we're talking about, in the advice part of that supply chain. As we know, change is everywhere in the family office space. Just the sheer volume of surveys, white papers, thought leadership, which is not a term that I love, conferences, newsletters, podcasts, such as this one, I guess. What it points to is an industry that is growing, and the current service providers are very keen to capture as much of their wallet as possible. I get a lot of inquiries saying, can I pick your brain on this? Would you mind having a conversation about this? It's from a range of suppliers in terms of, from wealth management, asset management, professional services, accounting and tax, things like that, consulting, across the board. Everyone's looking at this space. And it's interesting to sort of see the models and the systems that are currently in place and how they fit into them. So the client is different for a lot of these providers, but the systems that they use are the same. So what could be the new iteration that goes against this given wisdom, this classic model? The question is, should we go against the current system that rewards certain advice models, or should we develop, a new way of assisting officers and hope that the system will change with us and start rewarding us for it? I guess it's the classic. It's the Netflix example is what I'm talking about. What is the advice model's version of going from renting DVDs through the mail to going all in on streaming? So, and just to be clear, I do not have the answer here. I'm hopeful that conversations may reveal something, that the current advice models may, if you look at them objectively, what might they be missing? What could they be leveraging where they're not? If you look at recent advice business that have started, and that happens across the globe at the moment, they're being spun out of family offices, so single family offices, and they're marketing their, what they probably call their insider knowledge of that specific client base. So maybe it'll come out of there. I don't know. Or maybe it'll come out of those firms that deal with more than one, that have dealt with hundreds of different family offices and have a database of what is working, what is not. So maybe the insights will come from there. Or maybe they'll just come from people giving it a shot and it works. And we'll see the version of Netflix pop up out of nowhere. You never know. Or maybe it'll be Whole Road. You don't know. All right. So in this episode, what I'm covering, what could drive these new models, the challenges of going down that new path, how offices, like family offices themselves, can assist with establishing these new models. Because let's face it, that's the whole point here. It's getting a better model for them. So why not be of use and of value and help trying to get these new models? And finally, I'll go through how can advisors view this moment in time and have some idea of which path to take. Because it might not be a path you want to take. So first, what could drive change? Let's face it, revenue models are going to drive everything. So there's a funds under advice, funds under administration, funds under management kind of model, which tends to be basis points, and some level of transaction fees and things like that. So I think what will drive change is if someone builds a better revenue model. Similar to, some versions of asset management where they've gone purely on performance, there might be a performance metric here. There might be an element of, this is our advice model. If we have a performance of this, then there is a revenue share here. Or it may be if the different metrics, there might be different metrics, such as if the market craps itself and we only have a downside of this, the difference between the two, there might be a revenue share or something like that, right? Or it may be total cost reduction if the new advice model is more of an operations and tech kind of advice model or a consulting model. we have saved you this much money. We have been able to increase efficiency here. So ultimately what I'm getting to is, what does the revenue model look like? Revenue dictates a lot of this, right? So I think that's where there's going to be some imagination and some insightful kind of work done in terms of what is the new revenue model. And I think that'll drive a lot of it. And we're also going into sort of the fractional consulting or the consulting piece. Consulting's not new. I'm a consultant, right? But offering advice or offering a version of consulting that's better than sort of the classic outsource model is less around being an agent of change or whatever you want to call it, and more about becoming part of the office itself. One term I heard used the other day, which is embedded advisory. So maybe that's going to be part of it, becoming part of the office rather than we'll come in, we'll make these changes and then we'll leave. It's going to be more around, becoming embedded within the office itself. So the other one, moment in time. I think this is quite an interesting one for family offices because they tend to have milestones. You build a business, you sell a business, you have intergenerational change, and then it becomes very, very different. So this has been tried before, more in retail, but it with limited success. But this is a model that might be suited for family offices because, like I said, they do tend to have really specific milestone pieces here. So from liquidity point to, I don't know, Gen 5 or something, like if you have a model where you can pop in and out and be already trusted, and you don't have to reestablish that, but you can come in when there's flux or when there's change. So maybe that's it. Maybe moment in time advice might be something to look at. Hyper specialization and just doing that. I think there's been talk, and I've done it the same, which is this idea of the generalist. But what's the opposite of that which is the hyper specialist. So really leaning into your lane, right? It's like Hall Road. I mean, one of the things I say about Hall Road is I stay in my lane. My lane is investment governance and, helping clients at the investment committee or the advisory committee level. That's what I do. I'm not investment management, even though historically I have done that. I like my lane. My lane is here. So if you can specialize, really hyper specialize and be really like this particular challenge we have, we know that there's a firm that just does that. And you'll also get referrals because people know that you're not going to creep into their lane. So I think this is, that advisor creep thing I think is really helpful. What's another one? Interaction with others, that more network effect, that your curated infrastructure piece. Don't ring fence. So no more ring fencing. I think if you're just saying, only we get to talk to this client and no other service providers do. I think if you can't plug into the office's model, and when I say model, I mean if you're not plugging into all their other suppliers, you're just not going to be welcome, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, it's just one of those things where you need to play well with others. And the other one being that, and I have seen this as well, which is it's risk-first advice. So a model where the advisor's main objective is to manage the total risk of the office, not the total return. It's not necessarily that they're siloed and they don't interact with each other. Risk and return obviously do. But if your singular focus as an advice firm or consultant or whatever it is to reduce risk in the office across the whole office, not just the investments here, then that is a specialised service and that might be worth family offices paying for. The other ones we're starting to see is those that are really technology driven, where the only objective is to build a technology solution that the office can plug into. The focus is on things like reporting, automation of data management, and not investment management. Again, it kind of goes to this specialization piece, but it's still an incredibly diverse and broad part of it, that technology piece. So if you can specialize in that, and we're always challenged by technology. So, and there are some really good firms doing this now. So I'd like to see that sort of grow as well. The other ones we're starting to see non-financial, where family dynamics, family education and family governance, things like that are really the central piece of it. And again, and I keep laboring this point a little bit, but choose it don't choose it as just a side idea, right? Do it, specialize in it, become known for it. And the last one is like affiliation and collaboration type models. So providing networks and introductions, you do see a few of those, but I think what might be interesting here is to, once you do have those networks and introductions and that sense of affiliation within family offices, is almost, I don't know what we use the term, but sort of like that blockchain kind of element, which is a list or a curated supplier database that has been confirmed. So we think this is the good supplier for this particular thing. It's been confirmed by this family office, and this family office, and by our own internal due diligence. So it almost creates this idea that that supplier can now move to other offices with the idea that they are trusted, that they've been put through due diligence, all that sort of stuff. And you can have that verified by technology or, or database or whatever. I think that's a really interesting one. Personally, I'd say I'd really like to see something like that sort of affiliation kind of, network of trusted suppliers that we can tap into. It's like, we want this, we'll go to this company or this database, and we'll get 4 or 5 ones, and we'll get the family offices that use them. We can talk to them. We can get their specific feedback. That kind of thing. That'd be cool. So that's one that I'm personally hopeful someone starts. So what are the challenges? Time. Like, has anyone that started their own business, as I have, and it's been going for 6 years, right? A lot of the benefits that I'm seeing now for Hall Road have taken the full 6 years to get to. But so if you're an advisor or you're looking at this space and going, well, this is something that I want to target, do you have the time? I mean, often we say a family officer's superpower is patience, but can the same be said for advisors? I don't know. I mean, advisors have to have revenue, right? They have to have components such as that. The current model can incentivize size of assets under management. So like I said, what's the new revenue model going to look like? What's going to replace that? Because it's so easy to understand. It's basis points of the funds that we manage in the mandate for you. It's a really easy structure to understand. It doesn't confuse things. Family members and people that may not have dealt with financial services or service providers within this space before understand that there is flat fee and there's funds under advice or administration or management fee. And it's really easy to sort of figure out that if you're doing a total cost piece, because as we've always said, the idea of a family office is the value to outweigh the cost. That's the simple metric that we should look at. And lastly, another challenge is the needs versus wants of the office. From my own experience, like I said, over 60 years, just because you think the office needs to change their model that might be better in your eyes, doesn't mean they want to or that they need to. So you'll need to really bring a level of empathy here around their decision-making process and try to figure out if it's worth their while, if they can get over that hump of saying, well, this model's always worked. Why would we go to this one where I'll have to explain it to people that it might be complex or it might be uncertain. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges. So if you're the family office in this case, though, like I said, what are the aspects that you can do, or what are the things that you can do to allow for these new models? Because what we're trying to do here is service you, right? So what can you do as an office to sort of open up the kimono, for want of a better term? All right, be open to change. Right. So just look at things from the case of, I know that worked, but this might be better. From an intergenerational point, bring them in at the beginning. Younger generations or newer generations love the idea that they can be beneficial in changing things and they can dig into this and they can understand it. And also they're going to be the ones going forward, right? Them and their children and all the rest of it, hopefully. So they're the ones that are going to benefit from this, even if it takes some time. So next one, review what your idea of wealth management looks like. Build portfolios that reflect purpose, maybe. I don't know. Like if you have a purpose or a value base, things like this, things that like these new models can mean that you can change your idea of the way that the wealth is managed. You just have to be thoughtful around it. Counterparties. think about counterparties more, as the previous podcast episode talked about, as scaffolding rather than service providers. They think of them as people or firms that you can learn from, that you can educate, that could be long-term or short-term, but are really trying to be there as support. And these new models might provide support that up until now you thought only you could provide. Internal resourcing, what should you be looking for, right? So if you have an internal resource that is good with managing other counterparties, then that might be a good way of saying, well, you go out and you, through your career capital, because this is what generalists tend to have, is like broad knowledge, be that person that can determine if there's things out there in these new models that might be beneficial for us. And control. You're going to have to a certain degree, think about the level of control that you want or that you have or you need. If you are looking for control around all aspects of the office, then none of these models will work for you, right? So if you think that you can do everything yourself, and that's perfectly fine, that's up to you, then you're looking at an internal model and internal staffing and things like that. If you think that maybe a hybrid or an outsourced version, then levels of control within each of these are going to be important as well. So what does it mean for the modern family office service provider or something, whatever you want to call it? Like we've talked about, incentives matter. So success, and what success will mean for you in this, I guess, which is going to be when the system starts to reward you. I know personally, Hall Road started to get rewarded for quite, not the sexiest part of investment management, which is governance and investment policies and purpose documents and stuff like that. But I am starting to see some reward here because people are starting to understand the reasons why they would need this structure or this infrastructure. So incentives matter, but also where revenue comes from. It also means that there's an element of going to be, education rather than telling. Are you part of the scaffolding, teaching people how they can do it for themselves and potentially moving away from you? Or are you sort of ring fencing it and saying, we are indispensable, you can't get around us, we are it? So you kind of have to make that decision. And there's lower revenue there's a potential for lower revenue at the beginning versus longer term revenue. Again, going back to sort of the Hall Road experience, lower revenue, but for longer and with clients that I enjoy working with is the priority. So that's the decision that I make. And also, as with everything, every business, risk of getting it wrong and having to change again. In big businesses, this tends to mean that the person tried to agitate for change gets moved along or moved into another area. If you're a sole practitioner or you're a small firm, sometimes that can mean you're going to have to rethink the model, and that can be really, really expensive, really, really scary, and potentially an issue for the viability of the business going forward. So really, really difficult. There's a reason why these systems are in place, and there's a reason why people try to build a business that sits within these current systems, because it's relatively safe as you can get that system to work for you, and it's tried and true. So moving out of those systems can be a challenge. So hopefully that was helpful. Think about Hall Road, I guess, in terms of all these different things, because this is what, if you're a family office, Hall Road does a lot of these component pieces in terms of managing outsourced suppliers and things like that. So if you want to have that conversation around what the new advice model might look like for your office, then feel free to give me a buzz. But that's it for this episode. Hopefully, again, it was of interest. If it was, make sure to alert and rate it on your chosen platform. If you're looking for more family office insights, be sure to subscribe to the Sherpa newsletter, which you can find at hallroad, hallroad.com.au. It's been going for 6 years. It's information similar to this, but it's more in links to, like I talked about at the beginning, thought leadership, white papers, things like that. So please subscribe if it's of interest. You can find me on LinkedIn, or always feel free to email me at Shaun, so it's SHAUN, at hallroad.com.au. Thanks,